What's up, everybody? Rob here. So we all know what happened at the Battle of the Little Bighorn when George Armstrong Custer was outnumbered by a force of Native Americans and completely wiped out. But was he also outgunned? Well, there's a theory that says that he actually was completely outgunned by his Native American opponents. Let's explore that very interesting theory. All right, let's take a look. So, we all know what happened during the Battle of the Little Bighorn. If you're unfamiliar with the battle, I won't go into too many details. There are plenty of other sources that are much better at that sort of thing, play-by-play accounts of what happened than I am. Suffice it to say that a number of Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho gathered together for a religious ceremony called the Sundance. Now, the Sundance was suppressed by American authorities they thought that it would stir up a lot of trouble and lead to more conflict, so they tried to shut that down, and they didn't like a bunch of Native Americans stepping off of the reservation, which also was something they weren't particularly fond of. So they sent George Custer and the 7th Cavalry to bring them back into the fold by whatever means necessary. On June 25th, 1876, the 7th Cavalry approached the Native American encampment. Custer and the rest of the American leadership vastly underestimated the size of the Native American force, and Custer, being the military genius that he was, in the face of a numerically superior enemy, divided his command. One section was directly under his command, one was sent under Major Marcus Reno, and another under Frederick Benteen. There was also a supply train there as well, but doesn't really factor into the battle. Basically, you have those three. They, of course, were sent in multiple different directions in order to hit the Native Americans from multiple different angles, and they were too far away from each other for any sort of mutual support. Custer and his command were all wiped out, and the other command under Reno and Benteen, they did manage to link up and fight their way out, although they suffered heavy casualties along the way. Now, no one doubts that Custer was outgeneraled by Sitting Bull, Crazy Horse, and other Native American leaders, although let's just say that that's not exactly a high bar to clear because Custer actually graduated last in his class at West Point. So, yeah, make of that whatever you will. Not exactly the next Napoleon here. Now, he was outgeneraled, and we also know that he was outnumbered, with some estimates placing this at as much as 9-1. But was he actually overwhelmed by sheer firepower from the Native Americans? Now, this is actually kind of an odd image. Most people's image of the U.S. military is one of technological superiority, and American soldiers being outgunned is unthinkable. But in the late 19th century, well, it might have been the case. See, at this point, the U.S. cavalry was armed with the trapdoor Springfield, which is chambered in .45-70, and it's a single-shot breech loader. Now, a little bit of an explanation here. You see, these things were not actually originally breech loaders. They were actually muzzle loaders. They were used during the American Civil War. The standard rifle, or it technically was a rifled musket. These were muzzle loaders. You would pour powder down the barrel, then you put a percussion cap on the nipple at the end of the cocking mechanism. Yes, that's very funny to say. Anyway, very tiring, very tedious task. You get about 3 to 4 shots per minute this way. Thing is, when the Civil War was over, everyone realized that these paper cartridge muzzle loaders were a thing of the past, and brass case metallic cartridges and breech loaders were the way to go. However, the U.S. government saw the hundreds of thousands of Springfields that they had acquired during the Civil War, and they thought, well, we don't want these to go to waste, so they converted a lot of them into these breech loaders. And the way it works is the breech block, or the breech lock at the back, is in fact it's a trap door. What you do is you open up the breech, you stick a round in, you close the breech, you cock the hammer, you aim, you fire, you open the breech that ejects the empty shell casing, you then put a new cartridge in, close it, cock it, fire. That's basically how the trapdoor Springfield works. So that was how the 7th Cavalry were equipped. They were actually equipped with the carbines, which are short-barreled versions of, they're short-barreled rifles. You guys should know what a carbine is. They were also equipped with the Colt single-action revolver, which is a 6-shooter, can come in multiple different calibers. You guys know what revolvers are. The exact caliber really doesn't matter. What matters is how many rounds you can get down range, at least for this argument. So this is actually a pretty significant amount of firepower, especially compared to the muzzle loaders of even about a decade or so earlier. Now, the normal tactic of cavalry, however, did in fact lower the amount of lead that they can send downrange at any given point. The main procedure for them would be to dismount to fight and basically fight on foot like dragoons. 4 men would actually do fighting. They would dismount, and 1 man was left holding the reins of their horses so the horses didn't run off. So 1/5 of any cavalry detachment would actually not be fighting except in the most desperate of circumstances. So at any given point, up to 1/5 of Custer's men were not firing at the enemy, which cuts back on the amount of firepower that they had available to them. And Custer was further hampered in the firepower department by the fact that they did not bring any of the several Gatling guns that were available to them at the time. Custer, being the military genius that he was, did not bring them with him. Now, he said that they were too cumbersome and they would slow him down, and he is right in that regard. But then again, having some Gatling guns available would kind of be useful. I don't know, maybe bring them with the supply wagon and, call them up as needed, but whatever. Anyway, these are hand cranked and had a rate of fire of around 200 rounds per minute, although that is completely irrelevant since there were none present at the battle because Custer did not bring them with him. Now, over on the Native American side, it's much harder to tell with what they were equipped with. Now, of course, they had no manufacturing of firearms, and they had to acquire their weapons through trade or conquest, and they had a wide array available to them, with each warrior essentially responsible for his own gear. Now, there were traditional weapons there as well, such as lances, which could be used from horseback or on foot as well, but they were mostly a cavalry weapon. And they also made use of tomahawks, clubs, and bows and arrows, with both stone and metal heads. And yeah, that's basically the traditional weapons. You know what we're dealing with here. They also did have a large number of firearms. A lot of these were antiquated guns, such as flintlock muskets, but also muzzle-loading percussion cap firearms, such as the unmodified Springfields and Enfields as well. They also possibly had some trapdoor breech loaders of their own as well, and probably also had a number of revolvers. But here's the interesting part. They also had a significant number of repeaters, which is actually fairly new technology at this point. They could be Henry, Spencer, or Winchester repeaters, and these would be lever action. Now, the way they work, the rounds would be held in a tubular magazine on the underside of the firearm underneath the barrel, and the rounds would be stored there. And as you work the lever, so you'd work the lever that would eject the empty shell casing. You then work the lever back into the set position, and another round would be fed into the chamber ready to fire. So fire, work the lever, fire, work the lever. The rate of fire is how fast can you do this, and you can get a very impressive rate of fire with this if you know what you're doing. Now, it's actually pretty hard to say who had what, but according to some archaeological analysis of the battlefield, basically going around with metal detectors, finding shell casings and bullets and, the debris of battle, it's estimated that roughly half of the Native Americans involved had firearms of some kind. And there's an estimate, again, it's hard to tell how many Native American warriors were involved and how many of them actually participated in the battle. It's, records are pretty contradictory on that. But anywhere between 1,000 and 2,500 Native Americans, half of them with firearms. So we're talking upwards of over 1,000 guys with guns fighting against Custer's men, which, by the way, the entire 7th Cavalry was about 700 men, but again, like I said, broken into multiple different parts, about 200 or so in each section, give or take. So any case, the point I'm saying is that about half of the Native Americans had firearms of some kind, and again, these ranged from musket balls, or muskets, revolvers, trapdoor Springfields, and other trapdoor breech loaders like that, single shots, and mini balls, pretty much everything in between. And it is estimated, though, again, due to battlefield archaeology, that it was possible that in addition to these firearms, about 200 or so Native Americans were armed with these multi-shot repeaters. So that would be pretty conclusive proof that Custer and his men were outgunned. I mean, you had 200 or so warriors who can just lay down this blistering barrage far faster than anything that, that they could return fire with. And that was one reason why they were just overwhelmed. Basically, they were just overwhelmed with the sheer amount of firepower. Well, not necessarily. You see, it's possible, and it's actually even probable, but there's actually much more to it than that. See, to reload a repeater, you have to do is open up the magazine tube, and then the rounds have to be inserted into the tube one at a time. There are all kinds of videos you can look up to see what the procedure is like. It does vary a bit from, a Henry to a Spencer to a Winchester, but you get the basic idea. You can look, like I said, you can look it up. It's not hard to find. In any case, this is, as you can imagine, a very tedious process. So basically, it would be a fully loaded repeater can lay down a very impressive barrage of firepower, but once the magazine is expended, there's going to be a lull while the person reloads. So massive firepower, pause to reload, massive firepower, pause to reload. All the while, the trapdoor Springfields can lay down a much slower but much steadier barrage. So over an extended period of time, it's actually possible that a Springfield can, in fact, shoot more rounds, over time. So basically, it's slow and steady winning the race. At least that's the theory. Now, maybe that is the case. Maybe it's not. Again, we don't know. I'm just bringing the theory to your attention, and let me know in the comments what you think about this. Personally, that doesn't hold much weight. That explanation does not hold much weight with me. Yes, it is true that, again, slow and steady does win the race, but at the same time, Custer and his men were also vastly outnumbered. So they would be receiving a steady barrage from incoming rounds pretty much all the time, as well as, arrows as well. And I'm sure some Native American threw some rocks at them. Like, they were being hit pretty much with everything but the kitchen sink. If they got hit with the kitchen sink, it would not surprise me. They have not found any on the battlefield, but, wouldn't shock me at all. And they wouldn't all be, the Native Americans would not all be firing at the same time. But basically, they would be firing at will. They would be firing at their own discretion. So while one warrior would be reloading, others would be firing at them. Basically, it would be staggered fire or covering fire, and so basically you'd have like one warrior would expend his ammunition, then another warrior from another direction would expend his ammunition, and then another warrior from another section would expend his ammunition, and then by that time, that was done, then the first warrior would probably have reloaded at that point and was laying down another barrage of his own. All the while, they were still being hit with, again, muzzle loaders and revolvers and, breech load, single shot breech loaders and bows and arrows and everything else along the way too. So yes, so I personally do think, yes, Custer probably was outgunned. I think personally, that's just my opinion, he was probably just hit with an overwhelming amount of firepower. And while really I think it comes down to a matter of averages, the trapdoors being a mean point in rate of fire between muzzle loaders and repeaters. Like, repeaters have a very high rate of fire, muzzle loaders have a very low rate of fire, trapdoors are in the middle, and in terms of the sheer numbers that the warriors have, that would more than make up for any temporary deficiencies in firepower while the repeaters were reloaded. Yeah, that's just my take on the matter. Do you think Custer was outgunned? I don't know. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. Maybe you have different insights on this than I do. It's just an interesting theory. I don't have any strong opinions on this one way or another. I just wanted to, it's just something that popped up recently, and figured I'd share it with all of you. That's pretty much it for this video. Please hit the like and subscribe button. More videos will be coming out whenever I get around to it. Have a good day. Or don't have a good day. Your adults have any kind of day you want. See you later.